If you reject the conventional and embrace what's offbeat, guess what? It's time for Pillow Pete. 3 cheers! It's time for Pillow Pete. Fuck me! It's time for Pillow Pete.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Prattling with Pillow Pete. Today I have a very special guest star who you may know is a YouTuber who goes by the name Saberspark. So how you doing today, Saber?
Hello, Pete. I'm doing excellent. Been just fine. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for coming on to the show. So do you want to take a moment and kind of introduce yourself to the audience?
Absolutely. So my name is Saberspark. I just go by Saber online for the most part. I have a YouTube channel where I talk about animation. It takes the form of video essays. We're talking about like obscure content, whether it be like failed films or animated movies or shows that are off the beaten path from traditional media. I do reviews. I do occasional special projects where we make our own unique animated content called Drunk Recap. And as of late, we launched a reanimation project for VeggieTales unofficially. Actually, I don't think I've said that out loud to anybody except for the team. So you're the first to hear that.
Oh,
and yeah, we just staying busy, just having fun, just being goofy with this weird job of mine that allows a grown ass man to talk about cartoons for a living. So that's my life apparently.
That's incredible. I can't lie. I'm actually kind of jealous. Like all of your stuff is just unbelievably interesting. And I kind of want to dive into, well, I guess this first question is going to be just kind of bland, but how did you actually get into making like YouTube videos, and how did you decide that you wanted to do video essays and things of that nature?
So it is a long story, but I'll keep it short because it can get off into tangent area.
Oh, no, I actually don't mind if you want to go off into a tangent. Please, I actually encourage that.
Word. Okay. So I've been on YouTube since its creation. And in college, well, I say since the very beginning, I joined in a year after like YouTube was like officially launched. And I went to college my freshman year in 2007. I had a roommate that introduced me to YouTube with like YouTube poops and just all the silly content on there. And I'm like, wow, this is insane. Because around that time, pardon me, excuse me, around that time, the idea of just making content, like I've dipped my toe into those waters with my camcorder with my buddy Robert back when we were like in the early to mid 2000s with like making our own Lego movies with stop motion, and then learning about like Newgrounds and YTMD. It's just how you can make content. You could upload content, you put it online, that there's an audience that would watch it that you don't even know who they are. It blew my mind. And so I became a person who was fascinated by the idea of making content. Though I'm not much of a content creator, I'm not an artist, I'm not an animator, I'm not a musician, I'm not a sculptor. I'm more of a personality, I suppose. But at that point, I didn't really know that. So I tinkered around, tried making some YouTube poops on my channel, tried making some YTMDs and also, of course, just consuming content and seeing the growth of YouTube from essentially the beginning and it continuing on into the 2010s, where in 2012, because a big part of it was me just not knowing how to do it. Like, okay, what content do I want to make, and how can I even make it? What do I need a microphone? How do I get software to record it? How do you edit it? Windows Movie Maker, I guess. And in 2010, I think technology started to catch up with the demand from people. I did the Brony fandom stuff back in like 2011. I made a video essay called Ballad of the Brony, which was some college project where it was like, hey, let's talk about a deviant subculture. And I was like, well, I can leverage my fascination for YouTube and bronies with this class. I asked my teacher, can I make a video project about bronies, just talking about why they're considered deviant and why they're marginalized because of just this weird juxtaposition of older men liking pink ponies. And she's like, yes, love it, do that. I made like an hour-long video, which was never the objective. It was, I thought it'd be like half an hour. And she loved it. I put it up on my YouTube channel, just why not? And took off. There was actually an audience that was like, yeah, we like these brony video essays. And I did that for the next few years. And then around 2014 and 15, I took a break from pony stuff. Well, I guess it was an unofficial retirement where I'm like, I think I'm done doing pony stuff. No bad blood. And I still go to Brony conventions because I met some of my best friends from that. And at that point, it's like the ponies were the common denominator for us getting creative and being friends. But now we just hang out because we like each other. And I switched over to doing like sketch comedy videos in the mid 2010s. And then in 2015, I pivoted to just doing video essays about animation in general. So I'm like, well, my audience, I built around a YouTube channel of around 60,000 subscribers, which is nothing to snuff at. But it was dormant because I retired from the pony stuff. And I'm like, well, how can I salvage the channel? I don't want to start over. Well, these pony folks, they like animation, obviously, because My Little Pony cartoon is what brought them here. I guess I'll do a video that might pique their interest. And it was called Why Animation, I think it was cartoons. I can't believe I'm forgetting. Why Animation Isn't Just for Kids or something like that. And yeah, I was surprised. It took off. And then that was like the new era for my channel where it's just like, oh, just talk about animation in general. And it felt very organic and it popped off. I mean, I thought it'd be just a hobby and that was it. But then it became a career. And I guess I haven't looked back ever since.
That's just like an incredible journey. That's awesome.
I'm lucky. I do with every time I talk about what I do, I can't really overstate how insanely lucky I was and continue to be, where what started off as a hobby just on its own just kind of failed upwards and here I am.
Yeah, you especially hit it big time. You made it onto my podcast. 100 some subscribers.
You know what? Here's the thing: is I do get emails where folks will like kind of interview you, and I love this stuff because I like talking to people, and it's more of an issue of finding the time for it. But I don't know. It's something where it's like the grind of making content and talking to folks and what gets us excited and the gumption of it all, of wanting to grow your channel and your brand and it's just, I don't know, it still gets me excited because I've been there. So to see others who are in my position years ago doing the same grind, I respect it. I know how hard it is.
I appreciate hearing that. And well, I mean, once again, I already thanked you once for coming on, but I really do appreciate it. And I know like we're just getting started, but I do truly thank you for taking time to do this.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No worries. And so along like with everything you just said, I noticed like you said, like you're not like an artist or a musician or anything like that. So who exactly does, or like who has like made like the caricature that like you use for your videos? Because it's a great drawing. Like I love all of the expressions. And I'm just kind of curious to hear like how that came to be.
So it's funny how the Bernie stuff really was a boot camp and in a lot of regards for how I became a content creator, where the Bernie, and I've talked to my friends about this, where like you hear Bernie stuff and it's kind of like, those weirdos. And I understand that initial reaction, but I have to like try to be an emissary to it, not to convince folks to be like, you have to be like bronies or approve them, but more of there's more to it than you realize, where it's not some weird religious like zealots trying to convert you, but more of a human story where it's the creativity behind it, the ambition of folks trying to host these conventions and this little microcosm of creativity of folks who, like, I've never seen anything like it before or ever since, to have such a small community just crank out so much content that was insanely well done, and it kept challenging, just sharpening the teeth of creators. It was amazing to see, and that's how, like, through that I realized, so I've never been an artist or a good animator, which is ironic that I do animation review. Yeah, I can't really draw, and I have to keep that in mind, where it's like, don't ever get too inflated in the head. Try and continue to better myself as well. Like I'm trying to read animation books where I can't draw, and also maybe there's something to it where it provides a little bit of humility for myself, where like, because I saw the Fairview question down the road, and I won't spoil it, but like, I know that making animated content, period, is not easy, and that it's a grind. It can be a struggle, and sometimes it's very unrewarding and demanding, of course, on top of that. So at least there's perspective, knowing that, like, and I say that knowing that animators know that better than I, because they do it. But I suppose to summarize my thoughts here, because I'm starting to ramble, I know it's tough, and I try to keep it in mind when I review stuff, not to be like, wow, this looks awful, nobody tried, versus like, no, they tried. Well, maybe Missing Fairview might be a very poor example, because I actually don't think they tried, but something like, I don't know, Ice Age 4, I didn't care for it, they didn't try. And it's like, well, yes, but it's still, there are people who are talented who made the content, who animated it. You can at least acknowledge that. The story, the characters, not so much. The animation, it's very good. So for me, I realized I'm not good at it, I should hire someone who is. And I went through a process of like coming up with my own concepts of like what my avatar would look like. And then I found an artist friend of mine named Nathan Butler back in the day, who like, here's my notes, what can you come up with? And he came up with my first avatar, which was a bit more realistic looking than the one I have nowadays. And then I did that for like a year or two, or a year and a half. Then I switched over to a second avatar, which was a lot more realistic, kind of Tumblr style going on. And that only lasted for a video or two, because I was like, no, I'm not feeling this. This was a mistake. And I went back to my first avatar temporary. No, actually, I stopped using my avatar for like a few months and went back to the drawing board. And then Nathan came up with my current avatar, where I was like, hey, I mean, again, I like to say, like, I had notes, I had thoughts, I have concepts, I have examples and references, and I gave them all to Nathan, and we chopped it down, and I'm like, boom, that's it. That's the character. That's the one I want. That feels good with my content. I want something that's a bit cartoony, not too realistic, and it's good for branding, makes it feel like it's me. And boom, that's how I got my avatar. And Nathan Butler did a great job. And then I've had some help from Flutter Spartan, who has contributed some more avatar poses to that. But Nathan came up with the avatar, like as far as taking my notes and churning out that as a result.
Nice. Yeah, I do love the avatar, because I think I have seen the earlier one you were talking about that's a little more realistic. And like, even that, I think it looks good. But the one you have now, I mean, maybe this will sound dumb, but like, I think it's like an iconic design. It's like, it's just well put together. You can recognize the silhouette. And again, like, I love the expressions. And I'm actually going to be drawing it, because I always do thumbnails for all of my podcast episodes. So I'll have a chance to kind of explore and be like, okay, like how, like what are certain elements, and like how do they work for like that drawing. So I actually really look forward to drawing
awesome.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. And I guess like along with the creation of certain aspects of your channel, how did you come up with the name Saberspark?
I played World of Warcraft back in the day, back in like the early 2000s, mid 2000s. And I was sitting at the character creation screen for my human warrior. And I'm like, well, what should I name him? And my buddy Robert, who ended up playing Warcraft eventually with me, I forget what we were watching, but I think it was some movie with like that Scuba Steve character. I can't remember the exact like movie, but I was like, Scuba Steve, that's cool, because my name's Steven. And I'm like, I'll try Scuba Steve. I typed in Scuba Steve, and it was like, oh, name's taken, sorry. Try something else. And I'm like, well, I want alliteration. Saber Steve. Yeah, Saber Steve. And that's what I went with. So Saber Steve on there. And then I, years later, made my YouTube channel, and I typed in Saber Steve, and it was taken. And I was like, what? And throughout Warcraft, though, folks always called me Saber. And I always liked that. I'm like, Saber, it's just perfect. It works for me. I don't, there's nothing to do with the sword, really. Nothing to do with, it's just a name. And I wanted to keep that part of the name. And I'm like, well, I need something to have after that, because Saber is also taken on YouTube. So I need a spark of inspiration. Saberspark. I like that. Saberspark. It's cool. I'm Saberspark. and that was my channel's name. Its origin, which there was a very brief second where I almost called myself Professor Pony during the Brony stuff. Yeah, bullet dodge, right? And that name was taken on YouTube. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'll just go with Saberspark, and that's how it went.
Nice. I kind of had a similar situation with like my name because I just went with Pillow Pete. I don't remember if I had much trouble with it, but it is like the dumbest reason I came up with it. I was like, oh, around the time I made it, I was like 12 and I loved pillow pets. And I'm like, what if I just put an E at the end?
So here's the thing is you don't, sometimes it doesn't, you have people who, the broad spectrum of people, where you can have someone who like has, oh, this is such an important pillar of how I became a person. I want to incorporate that into my name. Or someone who just rattles off whatever, and that's fine. I think the end game is still this, or the end results are still all the same. That's your name. And because there are people where it's like, oh, gosh, I mean, Markiplier is a name where it's like, what? How'd that come about? Well, I guess his name's Mark. Maybe he likes, I don't know, pliers. I don't know that. I do not know the origin of his. I'm sure there's more to it. Or like Ego Raptor with Game Grumps, like Ego Raptor. That's out there. Or there's just PewDiePie. It's like what? And I feel like it's the person who makes the name. So it doesn't mean that some. I mean, a name can be powerful. It can have branding. Like, I guess, not for upward momentum. If you can like get good content, have a good name, it clicks and boom, off you go. So I'm not gonna like detract saying a name can't help, but at the same time, like, I don't know, just there's something universal about like, hey, what's your online name? Or that's something else that's interesting is that like you've got your traditional name, your Christian name, I don't know, whatever. But then I said tongue in cheek, but like, you got your normie name and then you got your online name. Most folks have online names nowadays. That was such a wild concept back in the day. Like, what's your online name? It's like, what? It's like, no, now everyone mostly has an online name. Well, not everybody, but a lot of folks do, where it's like, I'm Ted, Donnie in real life, but online I'm Ninja Dragon Warrior 96 or something. And it's like, oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. And like, it's especially interesting because like whenever I get like people on my podcast, it's like I always like hearing like the origins of names just because I think it's just cool to hear like how certain things came to be. And I feel like more comfortable in situations like that. But sometimes like if I go to a store, it's like I have to like provide an email and like my email's the exact same as just my online stuff. And I'm like, oh boy. Every time It's like I kind of cringe whenever I have to say
embrace the cringe. Embrace it.
I think I'm getting a little bit better on it. But I'm gonna kind of jump around here because like you've mentioned like pony stuff like multiple times. So I'm gonna actually skip to probably halfway down to like on the list that I sent you. Can you tell me your experience a little bit more about whenever you were at Las Pegasus Unicon?
Oh my God. All right.
I mean, you don't have to. You don't have to.
No. I said, oh my God, because this is one of the oddest things I've ever been a part of. So again, Bronies really took off where like typically when you have conventions come from a single show, it requires a lot of people to make it happen, to mobilize it. Bronies had like, there was enough of a contingent quantity wise to fund and fuel the flames of Brony conventions, because a lot of them popped up, a lot of them, it became a bit of a craze. Unicon being a result of that. But at the same time, like Star Trek is massive compared to Bronies, yet Bronies were able to kind of like, it's a weird thing. I don't know what exactly made this happen, but like it really brought in a bunch of folks who wanted to challenge each other and keep upping the ante. And part of that would also include convention runners. And I'm sure some of that was probably siphoned away from furry conventions, because let's just be real here. But for Unicon, because it was like, okay, 2011 had like BronyCon unofficially. It was like a pilot version of BronyCon in like New York. And then in 2012, we had like BronyCon Secaucus, New Jersey. And that was huge. I was there. It was like, I think, say 6,000 bronies, and everybody was on cloud nine. Everfree Northwest popped up, Equestria LA, Carolina Gardens. But in 2013, in like spring, I believe, there was a convention called Las Pegasus Unicon, and I was invited to go to that. And I was like, wow, I'm actually invited to go to a convention. They're going to pay for my flight. Or, oh, hold on, they'll reimburse me. And I guess they'll reimburse me for the room too. I was so naive at the time. And that should have been a red flag. But I guess I was so trusting. And me and a bunch of other friends in the Bernie stuff went out there, and we saw a convention that was hosted in a casino hotel. And that was really bizarre. But we were also happy-go-lucky at the time. We're like, Bernie's can change the world. Let's go. And along the way, we started noticing, like, yeah, the panel or the vendor hall is kind of thrown together sloppily, whatever. It could have looked better compared to the previous conventions at that point. And there was this weird thing where you like traded in your money for like tickets, and that's the currency, which kind of defeats the point, where it's like you don't need a middleman currency. Like, just let the transactions be between the customers and the vendors. Done. But this was some way for the con to get, like, I guess, their hooks into the transactions. And then the con staff was like almost non-existent. And Friday was like, okay, we're all kind of naive and hopeful. Saturday, okay, I guess we're still rolling with this. And things, you can just tell that there was like under the surface, something was up. Saturday night, I went to my friend's like suite party. And while I was there, it's like, oh, look, all the prominent bronies of the fandom here from different brony media outlets, lol. And some of the voice actors and talent from My Little Pony were also there with their agents. And they were like, yo, we got to pull some folks to this other room here and talk to them in private. It's kind of urgent. And I was invited to go in. And it was like the Council of Elrond, where it's like strangers from distant lands who've been assembled to answer the threat of Mordor, except instead of Mordor, it's Unicon. We were told that the con was a scam and that the staff was basically throwing down their arms and running away, whether the volunteers were quitting or whether the actual command they were pulling the trigger and getting out of there. And they're like, the agents were like, if Hasbro, the folks who own My Little Pony, because at this point there was this tenuous relationship between Hasbro and like Bernie conventions, where the policy was them turning a blind eye to it, as far as like the handling of the guests, the show staff, as far as IP goes and copyright. They're just like, whatever, it's not worth our trouble. And the agents made it seem like if Hasbro finds out that this failed, this would be the last pony convention. And to all of us bronies who were on cloud nine about it, we were like, we have to do everything we can to salvage this con. So a bunch of other con staff folks who were from other conventions who came to Unicon just for like networking stepped in to raise money through the Bernie media outlets to help get all the guests, the show staff back home, cover their flights, and help out everybody else who got screwed over, including myself. And it was such an interesting moment where the scam artist took off, but a bunch of altruistic bronies stepped up to keep things together, to like get to the lifeboats as the Titanic sank, and get folks out of there. And in hindsight, I don't think Hasbro would have done anything to that extreme, but who could say? Maybe they could have, I don't know. But the con was salvaged. The guest staff, the show staff got home, and there was a sense of defeat afterwards, though also a bit of a silver lining that we were able to pull this off. Like, even rival brony media outlets were like, let's put on our arms and work together. And which, again, like, it goes to show this little arena that are bronies, where it's like, again, it's so easy to dismiss bronies being like, who cares, a bunch of grown men. It's like, no, hold on, there's a drama here, there's a human story with peaks and valleys and like call to action as far as like the climax of this entire saga. It's like, just, it doesn't matter that it's bronies. What you have here is a drama. Let me tell you about it. And yeah, I mean, there were people yelling at each other, trying to just throw things together to keep the con from falling apart. The hotel was kicking people out of their rooms and keeping their security deposits to make up for the loss of money for the hotel rooms. It was wild. And yeah, I mean, it was a disaster, but one that could have been so much worse. And then the next convention after that was Equestria LA. That came like a month or two later, and that one was ran perfectly and was such a palate cleanser, where we're like, yeah, this is what a con should be like. Unicon was us getting fooled, never again. And I can say with conviction that it never happened like that ever again. I mean, maybe some hangups, but never a flat out scam that went to that degree.
Yeah, like it's insane because like prior to like recording this episode today, I actually watched Pan Pizza's video where like he had you on to discuss some of it, and I'm just like, it just seemed unbelievable. I can't even imagine being there like in that situation. But I mean, at least everyone was able to kind of band together,
Right.
and especially like just as like bronies, it almost reminds me of like Sonic fans. I don't know if there's ever been like a bad convention for Sonic fans like that, but fan bases are definitely very passionate, especially for certain properties like My Little Pony or even Sonic. So
Right.
at
Well,
least it wasn't too bad at the end, I guess.
it could have been worse. It could have been worse. And I do think that it was like giving credit where credit is due. A bunch of folks who didn't have to came to the assistance of helping people they don't know. And I think there's something very beautiful about that, even if it has to do with a bunch of grown men who like My Little Pony.
Absolutely. So I guess moving on from like My Little Pony and all of that jazz, I want to talk about how like you find like all of the obscure things that like you review, because obviously like something like My Little Pony, everyone knows about it, but you find like the weirdest things. Like how do you find everything that you talk about on your channel?
Starts with a spark of me just looking for it. And then the algorithms start to bless that by promoting more obscure animation to me. And then after getting lucky enough with my first few initial picks, it became a breeze where folks just overwhelmingly suggest stuff to me. So it required that initial push of like looking for obscure, weird things like Leo the Lion or Joshua. Then the algorithm gave me some blessings, and then everybody else were like, don't worry, we'll take it from here. So as much credit as I get for that, it's me more being brought to a buffet of insane content and then getting my plate out saying, well, what are we going to eat today? That's how it goes.
That's great. I mean, I guess it makes sense too, because I always wonder, I'm like, how does he find this stuff? Because like I'm kind of an animation nerd too, and I'm just like, I feel like I know a lot, but then like I see all of the so many videos we're just talking about, especially like foreign things, where I'm like, how does he find it? So that definitely makes sense. And speaking of just awful things, like what would you say is probably the best and the worst thing like you've seen recently?
Okay, so for the best, I actually just finished Hell of a Boss yesterday,
Oh,
and I love it. Hell of a Boss, and I want to do a video about this coming week, but Hell of a Boss it confounds logic itself, because animation is already insanely hard, let alone on YouTube. And YouTube's a hostile environment for just making content sometimes. Like all YouTube has to do is not mess things up, which they do, of course. And the fact that Hell of a Boss, because like of course there's unique animation on YouTube besides Hell of a Boss, but to see it to this degree, to this level of production consistently with characters coming back time and time again, where you've got a show that completely humiliates some of the content on like Fox adult animation or on Comedy Central. There's power to that. There are moments where I'm watching this and I pause and I'm like, how is this, does this exist? Like this is insane. It is ridiculous how good it is, how consistent it is, and how it gets better. And also, as far as adult animation goes, it's not just lol 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 poo poo sex joke. It's like, no, there's character growth. They get creative with the visuals and how they use it to express stories. There's a world building. I'm impressed. I'm downright impressed. I'm like, Hell of a Boss is one of the, if not the best examples of freelance animation on YouTube. It's hard. You'd be hard pressed to find something where I'm sure quality wise there are other contestants, but as far as production goes, I don't think anything comes close to that. As far as the worst stuff goes, I mean, in Fairview, yeah, Fairview, as far as like that one hurts the most, because like obviously there's a lot of terrible content out there that comes from small teams, but to have a TV channel mark off and approve something like Fairview just feels insulting. And then, I mean, I've seen some bad stuff, Finding Jesus, gosh, what was it? Alibaba and the Golden, or wait, was it Alibaba and the Golden Raiders or something like that's pretty terrible. Because to me, like the worst kind of content is when it's boring, and like Finding Jesus is utterly boring. And here, actually, let me pull up. I feel like I watched something that wasn't too long ago where I was like, this might be one of the worst things I've ever seen. But the worst part is I keep saying that over time, and folks are like, where does it end? Geez, Red Ape Family was terrible.
Oh my God, I know.
But at least that was like 6 minutes long. So like you have to take that into account. Gosh, I'm trying to look around here to see what there is. But like, yeah, I mean, there's like Bible Town is also like horrendous as well. So content like that, I'd say some of the worst I've ever seen.
That makes sense. Yeah. Like I haven't even watched any Fairview, and I'm like, I feel like I don't even have to. Like maybe that's mean of me. I like giving shows and movies chances, but like there are certain things where I know like damn well it's going to be a waste of time. But I mean, hey, I guess maybe I'm like the people at Fairview. I mean, we're recording on the same equipment they use.
Right. It's like, yeah, look, we're just the same level as them. Look at us, we're professionals.
Oh God. And I know like you were just kind of like throwing all of that just kind of together. In your opinion, like what do you think is worse comparatively, like Fairview or the Red Ape Family? At least I guess in terms of quality, because I know time frame 6 minutes is easier to swallow than I don't even know how long Fairview episodes are, but
I actually, and it's funny because you ask, there's a question that you showed me the questions before we started, and one of the questions I actually could say like 2 days ago I would have said no, but I watched an episode yesterday, so I can say yes. We'll get to it in a second, but I'd say Fairview's worse because Fairview to me is so boring visually, where the expressions are all the same for the most part. And it's static. Like at least wow, I can't believe I'm saying Red Ape Family as a pro. Red Ape Family is cheap and awful, but at least it has expressions, which is part of, I guess, the entire NFT, like variety of expressions to pitch to people. Like, hey, they make this face, that face, and yada yada. So let's use those faces with the animation, I suppose. While Fairview is like they all have the exact same expression. There's no emotion in their face. It's just the same expression. And it's very hard to watch. Like you can feel your brain like melting while watching it.
God. Red Ape Family. I actually saw like they're going to be doing more Red Ape Family, and I actually haven't been able to keep up because they finally blocked me. On Twitter.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I tried. It was like 3 times. I would just say like the absolute meanest thing because like I hated NFTs, especially as an artist. I'm just like I can't stand them. And Reddit Family, especially I think like whoever created it tried saying it was better than The Simpsons, and I'm just like,
oh shoot! I'm sorry. So I pulled up Reddit Family here on Twitter, and in episode 2. Oh my God, did we actually strike a nerve here? So it says there's a tweet from 9 days ago where it says, "When episode 2 of Reddit Family," and they actually have good animation for this trailer. Because I'll be real with you, oh my God, they actually have good animation. Because the one of the people who worked on the show reached out to me, and they're like, "Hey, what can we do to get better?" And I didn't reply because I'm like, I don't want to give any kind of critic or constructive feedback to NFTs. I don't like NFTs. I don't want them to succeed. Mm-hmm. Like the last thing I want is folks to go, "Oh wow, look, a good NFT cartoon. I want to buy NFTs." Because I know it's a scam. So that's tough for me because I'm like, I could give you constructive feedback, and it's literally just be better at animation. Don't use these lazy puppets. But at the same time, I'm very reluctant because I'm like, I don't want to support you. Sorry, like I'm not replying. So it looks like they took the hint though on their own because like it actually looks halfway decent. I just wonder how long it's gonna. I mean, I guess I'll keep my eyes open here. Wow. I mean, if there actually was a way to shut folks up, it's by being good. So. I suppose the NFTs have had quite the drop in popularity over the last month, but I feel like it's about to rebound, and not as in financially be more lucrative, though maybe. But like January was NFTs. February and part of March, I suppose, were, World War III. I don't know, maybe. And now it's like we're back to NFTs, and it's like, okay, I guess World War III is subsiding. It's like what reality do we live in where we can actually say these things unironically?
God, I don't know. And like with NFTs, I made the mistake of mentioning them once at my job because I heard like a few people they were confused by like cryptocurrency. So I had to explain that to them. And I mentioned NFTs and they're like, what are NFTs? And I'm like, oh my God. I had to explain that to them. And I mean, they didn't even understand them, which that's good. I don't want to promote them, even if I'm like just criticizing them. I don't want people to know about them. But yeah, the timeline we live in, hopefully we don't just go back to World War III after NFTs make a comeback, just the entire year back and forth.
Right. Just take turns. It's like, oh, just have mercy on our souls, please.
Oh God. But yeah, I guess going back to Fairview, you said like you actually recently watched another episode. So...
And that goes right in the same vein because the episode was about cryptocurrency and NFTs.
Oh my God. Wow.
My friend Tom and I, because Tom works on the channel with me, we were watching Hell of a Boss. And before we got to the final episode 7 for Hell of a Boss, which there's another episode coming out for season 1, I think sometime this month or next month. But I'm like, let's watch an episode of Fairview just to get a juxtaposition of like adult animated content. And Tom was like, please, I beg of you, no. And I'm like, we're watching this. And we watched the episode and like we watched half of it and then I paused. And I'm like, I can't watch anymore. Like it's excruciating. It's just screaming with these these zero expression characters. And it was about some dragon convincing Fairview denizens to give their money for cryptocurrency. That's it. And I feel like the entire show is just a megaphone to scream topical stuff out, and that's it. And it's so uninspired. It's so boring. It looks awful. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen. And if it was on YouTube from some original team, I'd be a lot more forgiving, but it's from Comedy Central. And that makes it very embarrassing, where it's like, you're the same folks who make South Park, or at least distribute it. Can't you try and be better? And it's like, no, because they don't have respect for adult animation. They don't care.
Yeah, they really don't. It's been sad, like just seeing like the state of like all of this crap that just gets made, especially because, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, how it's like people, if they're working on something, it's like, there is at least some effort, like 9 times out of 10 being put into it. So like, I know people working on these shows like are trying, obviously Fairview, maybe not so much, but like, I hate just knowing it's like, these are talented people. It's like, it really feels like a waste of their talent. I mean, there was like a recent Fox show, I think it was called like Housebroken. I haven't even heard anyone talk about it. I'm just like, so it's a waste.
Well, and I think a big part of that too is just the fact that streaming has overtaken television considerably, but there's this bizarre relationship where TV still gets priority, and it's starting to shift where when there's enough financial success to tip the scales, streaming services from the companies who had a prior investment in TV will start to pull away. Because look at like Disney. All right, Disney was, I give Disney credit for being the ones to really be that final push to make all the other big industry or big entertainment like companies like Warner, Paramount, whatever, to start moving towards streaming. Because Netflix existed, but it was still kind of like, okay, it's just Netflix and TV still a thing, and we can keep TV going. I think a big part of that is because TV has had it so good for like decades that these companies don't want to give it up. They don't want to go to streaming because then they have to start all over. But then I think COVID like played a big part in that. Where and it's kind of crazy because up to this point, like Disney Plus launched in 2019, so before the COVID stuff happened, and that was insane timing because it's like, okay, Disney Plus is like poised to basically have all these folks who are staying at home with nothing to do, who want to watch content. Boom, watch Disney Plus, watch Netflix, whatever. And all these other companies are scrambling to assemble their IP and get some new content and be like, oh, yeah, Paramount Plus, please, or CBS All Access, or HBO Max, which credit where credit is due. HBO Max is pretty damn great.
Oh, yeah.
But I gotta say though, like there were within a 2-year time frame, you see all these companies react, trying to be like, oh shoot, Disney did this. Okay, they're a trailblazer, and if we want to be one of the pillars of streaming, we have to act now, or be left out. Because for every company that arrives late, there's that less of a pool of people to work with, unless you change up your strategy. Which for some folks, for some companies, it's like there is no membership. You just watch ads, and that's how we do it. So it's still kind of like TV to a degree. But like as far as cable or satellite goes for television, with like prearranged ads just running all the time with content, that stuff's going downhill. It's on its way out. The internet is here to stay. I can't even remember the question you asked that brought on this tangent. I apologize. But yeah,
it's not a problem at all.
Streaming services.
Yeah, I completely agree. And honestly, everything you said, because I kind of forget my own question, but this might be a good segue to ask, like, just what are your opinions on like the current state of the animation industry as a whole, like with everything that's been going on? Because I've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter where it's just, it's honestly just disheartening seeing like just how badly some of these people get treated. Like, I mean, do you think like maybe it'll be getting better? Like, what's your take on the whole situation?
So streaming services are generating a lot more content now than ever before. And because of it, they have to, because right now is like the investment phase where it's going to come at a cost. And by that's okay, because you're just trying to outlast competition and cast a wide net and do as much as you can to build properties to bring folks back. And then once you kind of find that like groove, then you start raising prices. So that means that these companies like Amazon Prime or HBO or Netflix are going to be going to studios and other companies to make content. And it's a bit of a double-edged sword where they're a lot more willing to take a gamble on something that wouldn't have worked on TV, especially Netflix. They're very good at that. But then other moments where it's like these animators are still not being paid what they deserve, where they're working long hours with almost no benefits, if any at all, and not being paid what they deserve. It's these companies are squeezing them to get the content and then to maximize their profits. There's an entire thing with like Centaur World where it's like season 1 and 2. And I was questioning that because I was like, that was the first moment where I'm like, that was weird, where Centaur World season 1, quote unquote, came out, and I'm like, that was awesome. I loved it. I hope that they greenlight an additional season. Though I was like, it's kind of weird that they would. It seems out of Netflix's wheelhouse to not go ahead and just give them their full story if it's a story-driven show. Just kind of scratching my head about that. And it's like, well, no, they did technically. So the entire show was completed. Netflix just decided to chop it up as a season 1 and season 2 and pitch it as so, which means these animators who should be being paid what they deserve for, like, okay, a season 1, season 2 is different than a season 1, as in like you're going to be paid more for multiple seasons versus just one. But Netflix is basically pretending that, oh, this one block of episodes, it's 2 seasons, when in reality it's like, no, it's just one. You're just splitting it up as so. Hey, if you don't mind, I'm gonna step away for a second and walk my dog real fast because he's standing up. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, that's fine. Take all the time you need.
Be right back.
All right.
Guys, sorry. Hey, that edit here where it just abruptly ended, that was on me. Had to go walk my dog. Pete, I'm sorry. Where were we?
You were talking about how Netflix and honestly other companies were pretty much just like making like 1 seasons and trying to pass it off as 2. And I honestly hate that because I have seen that where it's like, oh, it's season 1A and season 1B. And it's just like, if you're going to do that, just make it 2 seasons.
Right. It's a bit scummy and something that definitely requires attention because these animators are creating IP and they are working, period. And they should be paid accordingly for what they put into it. And they shouldn't be treated like trash and undervalued to such a sickening degree. So that needs to be better. That needs to change.
Very true. And like speaking of like animation, I actually want to talk about some of the animation that is actually on your channel because I looked a little more into it. I've seen where you work with, is it Velo or Velo animation? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
I'm trying to think. How do you spell it?
It's VELO.
I don't know who that is. Is it a content creator? Velos Animation?
Whenever I looked into it, at least I thought like they were the ones who like animated like the intro to like your drunk like Space Jam video.
Oh gosh. Okay. I'm so used to just calling them by their names and not by the company. Yes.
Oh.
It goes to show you how things are still so new as far as like us moving forward, where I don't even know where they have the content. Velos Animation, those bastards have been hiding it from me now. I think I see it here. Okay, so yeah, I have some folks who are colleagues and friends of mine who work on Drunk Recap and help me with like animating for it. And we actually have we currently have one in production for Lion King that should hopefully come out in like June or May. Very excited about that. We've changed the style up yet again. And yeah, that to me is fun because I can review content, but it's nice to actually like create content. I'm pumped about that.
I'm very excited to see that because like the few times I've seen their work like on your channel, I'm just like, it's unbelievably good.
Thank you.
Like, yeah, no problem. Like especially like at least like the one like fully like animated segment, I think it was a Space Jam one where it's like you're like turning around and like you're just drinking a beer, and I'm like, I would love to see more of that. So I'm excited to see what else you guys have in the works.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And honestly, this might be maybe a little bit, this is honestly not going to be a smooth transition at all, but kind of going back to earlier, I know like you mentioned a few times like certain like Christian pieces of media. Can you tell me about like what started your fascination with Christian media?
So I was raised Christian, and so I'm no stranger to it as far as like VeggieTales, 321 Penguins, and also just how like it's a demographic that rarely has quality. It's because it's hard to do animation at all. It's even harder to do quality animation. So I was quite well acquainted with just the variety of content that would be fielded from Christian animation companies or even animation companies that made Christian content. Doesn't mean they have to all be Christians in order to make Christian content. And yeah, wasn't that good? It was VeggieTales was like the one exception. There were VeggieTales. I mean, I guess 321 Penguins because it's from the same company. There's a few other ones out there because I do want to do a video someday just talking about Christian animation in general. But it's more often than not, it's not that good because Christians, and I'm not trying to like be that guy, but a lot of Christian families, their checkbox is it Christian? Yes. Okay, put it on. And it's like, oh, that's your threshold. All right. It's kind of, I was hoping that you'd be more than that, but whatever.
I can actually relate because I grew up kind of in a Christian household myself. And just over the years, I just started like poking holes in things. I'm just like, what is this? It's like, what? It's like, why? It's like, why am I following like any of this? Like, I don't believe this. And then, yeah, like seeing certain pieces of media, just how most of it, I don't know. It's just cheap. It feels like they just throw it together.
Right. And also, I mean, like, and it really goes to show you how good VeggieTales was, where it says a lot when you have non-Christians who genuinely like and watch the characters in the show and the stories. That's powerful. That's a testament that you made something good. And VeggieTales never got full of itself. It never overplayed its hand where it's like you have to baptize your potato in order to save its eternal soul. It's like, no, shush. Like there's Bible stories, and it's interesting because these Bible stories, like I think you can disarm it where it doesn't feel preachy, because a lot of secular audience can see a Bible story the same way they see like stories from other like mythos or other religions, and make of that as you want. Some folks might take offense to that, but like, the Greek gods with Hercules and Zeus and Hades, it's like, yeah, it's just that's their story. It's fun. I know those characters. All right. And this is the story of Moses and and leaving Egypt, or the story of Noah. It's just, to many folks, that's just a Bible story, and they don't get too upset or bent out of shape about it. If there's enough of a detachment where you can watch it without feeling you're being preached to. Though it also depends on who's handling, who's in the driver's seat, because they can get preachy if they want. But VeggieTales never got preachy. It was like, yeah, this is a story about love thy neighbor. This is a story about being brave. A story about standing up for yourself. And at the very end, God, I think God made you special and loves you very, very. He loves you very much, and that's fine. To most grounded people who aren't like raged out that easily, it's just like, whatever, that's just a small little farewell. And even I don't know where I stand with beliefs, nor will I bring down the podcast by getting into that territory. I can at least say that VeggieTales had a lot of tact and knew how to handle itself compared to other Christian content where it gets super preachy and it looks bad.
Yeah, I completely agree. And there are like other like certain like pieces of Christian media where I feel the same way, because I agree with VeggieTales. It's like, yeah, I think it's fine. I think honestly a lot of it honestly holds up to this day. It's pretty good, all things considered. There's actually, it's not like an animated piece of media, but there's a musical that I know is called Disco Jesus and the Apostles of Funk, and like it's as fun as it sounds, honestly. Like, and again, I don't like really believe in like any of like that religious stuff, but I'm just like, I can listen to the music and then I'm like, my God, it's genuinely good. And I also wish there was more stuff like that. Not that I'm thinking like, oh, we need like Christian morals and messages and more things, but if they were going to, it's like, can you just make it with quality, maybe a little more heart?
Right. And that's all we ask for. Is just, it comes from a place of intent. And if the intent, like the Gaither's Pond, which is like some obviously inspired, which even sounds like it's way too generous of a word to give to them. It's way too much credit. But like they were trying to get on the VeggieTales train and they failed because they didn't have the proper ideas, didn't have the proper, they weren't good animators. It came out looking terrible, which there's something, funny about that, where you can at least laugh at it. But VeggieTales was special. It did something pretty damn awesome and unique at the time. It was a trailblazer. I mean, the fact that like VeggieTales was one of the first to do it, and to do it in such an efficient way while having fun characters and good stories, that says a lot about them being very just quality storytellers and animators.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And nothing says Christian like gender swap episodes.
Okay. So yeah, tell that to Butch Hartman, Fairly Odd Parents.
I already talked about Butch Hartman. I had Ellis Mark on my podcast a little while ago. We talked about Butch Hartman.
How's my boy Ellis Mark doing that? It's so funny because like for Butch Hartman, I do wonder what he's currently up to, because that Oaxis thing is the more time that goes by, the quieter he remains on it, the worse it looks for him. And you know what? I am here for a redemption arc for Butch Hartman. If 2022 wants to at least throw us a bone where we can see some glimmer of human redemption, it's him being like, I messed up, I'm sorry, I want to be better, and here's how I'll do so. But I don't know. I doubt that.
I doubt it too. It's like something tells me if Oaxis ever comes out, it's just going to be the same stuff. I highly doubt it's going to be anything's going to change.
Well, the longer he waits, the more competition shows up that will just eradicate him. I mean, at the time it was like Netflix, because I think it was around 2017 or whatever, or 18, he was trying to do this. And ever since then, you have like these giant pillars of streaming plus legions of other small streaming services. I know he was pitching it for like family, but let's be real here, more of Christian families. And it's like, dude, you missed your window. Like, and even then, I doubt, even if you had a moment, I still don't think you could have achieved it with the seed money that you were given. Because like, I don't know, it's just I to this day I still feel like it was a scam.
I do too, because like whenever he was trying to show it, I think people found like an early version of Oaxis somewhere where he was just uploading like his like YouTube videos to it. And it's like, this isn't the content you promised.
Yeah, I'm looking at these comments on the Kickstarter. Someone replied 12 months ago saying, I backed this project near the start of the pledge window. I wish I hadn't at all. Not only did you not only did you keep your true intentions for the service a secret, you hadn't even been able to show any progress whatsoever. It's been over 2 years, and yes, I'm on the mailing list. No updates whatsoever. Why are you lying about this? What do you have to hide? Because you certainly don't try to hide your art tracing and awful ego. I wish you can get a full refund. It's like, yeah, if there was actual like merit to this, then so be it. But there isn't. The guy has nothing to show, and I think he and I'm trying, if I can give the benefit of the doubt for even a millisecond, it is that he reacted wanting to do this, thinking that he could do it, only to discover that you can't. And now you have to eat crow and give folks their money back. Or he purposely scammed people. Because no matter what, the results are all the same. He really messed up, whether it was deliberately or an accident. It's a bad look.
Yeah, it really is. And what was like throwing me off, because let's say if he was like actually genuinely wanting to do it, like with like no intention of just scamming people, I feel like he should have known. It's like he worked in the animation industry for like so many years. It's like does he not understand like the amount of money? It's like what he had. I feel like he should have maybe just tried to use the money to do like one pilot episode instead of trying to do an entire streaming service. Like I feel like if he did that, maybe he could have succeeded there. But no, he's like, oh, we're gonna do all kinds of content, sports, news, original cartoons, and it's like, you're not Viacom, like you're not like
No,
HBO Max.
It's I don't know. There's a lot of different scenarios of how this could have gone down or what's currently happening, but the fact that he spoke a big game, there's no results, no communication, those are massive red flags. It's just he tricked people. And now it's like, I don't know. Can you take this person to court? I don't know, because I mean it was like $200,000. That's not a small amount. It's not enough to do what he wanted to do, but still, like taking that from people, like I'd be furious.
Yeah, but me too. And speaking of Butch Hartman, didn't you? I think it was you who like spent like $150 for like his like 2 or 3 like Christian short videos.
That I did. It was pretty bad.
I can't believe you would actually spend the money on it. I mean, that's dedication.
I mean, like to me, I see this, I write off my taxes as a cost, but still, because folks are like, don't support it, don't talk about it. I'm like, some folks are in this camp of like, oh, giving it attention makes it worse. And I'm like, okay, yes, I understand where you're coming from, but also understand that we're dunking on Butch, and I feel like 99% of people who watch my video aren't about to spend that money to go watch it as well. If anything, we all collectively dunk on him, laugh at him, and most likely no one's going to buy it. And if anything, we're warning people. Maybe somebody who watches it sees their unsuspecting mom about to buy it for her grandchildren, and they're like, no, don't buy it, mom. Don't buy that. I don't know.
Nah, yeah, I mean that's how I see it. Like whenever I saw that, I wasn't thinking like, oh my goodness, how could you, Saber? How could you support it? It's like you're obviously criticizing it. I was just more surprised that like you would actually like go through the effort to do it. But again, I mean that's like how your videos are interesting. Like you do things that most normal people probably wouldn't actually bother to do.
Well, thank you.
No problem. And I guess speaking of like interesting stuff like that, and initially what I was even going to ask, I was not prepared to be complaining about Butch Hartman, but that was a fun tangent. I kind of want to talk about your gender swap episode and like how you managed to like pull that off, because that's also something I've never seen like another YouTuber do. It was a very interesting concept for a video.
Oh yeah, that was fun. I mean, it's not too complicated. Just wanted to do a gender swap episode. I think the gender swap trope is fun and can be kind of it's interesting to talk about, where it's like, why do they do it, and has it been done well? And I'm like, you know what, screw it, let's have let's gender swap my own character. So yeah, I did a casting call, had a bunch of folks audition. Elsie killed it, utterly just obliterated the competition, and that's how she came to be as far as being Saberspark.
Oh, nice. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know if I was expecting a short answer like that or a longer one, but I mean that's cool regardless. And I guess more in line like with your channel overall, can you talk about like the merch? Because I know you had the plush and then the U2's vinyl figure.
Oh, yeah.
Like, did you ever think like you would ever get to a point where you could make merchandise like that?
It all comes from the overall success of just YouTube in general. Because you have to keep in mind that YouTube for the longest time ran at a cost, and there wasn't like financially, or at least as far as audiences go, there weren't enough people there just yet. And it wouldn't be until around 2016 that we saw the shift. And ever since, it's grown exponentially, just larger and more popular. Like kids growing up now, like the young generation who are below 10, and of course the ones who are also teens, they grew up with YouTube. That's like their Nickelodeon. That's their Saturday morning cartoons is YouTube. And because of that, because there's such a higher demand and higher viewership and more financial or finances being, or more resources being dumped into YouTube, means that, okay, it will manifest things like makeshift with plushies, or people doing Funko Pops, where it's like these other companies are like, we're here to assist these content creators to sell to their channel or their audience. And for me, I mean, it's just, I love my audience. I love my viewers, and I don't want to call them fans because that sounds subservient. And I want to treat them with the respect of knowing that I wouldn't be where I am without them. So like, to have companies like Makeshift be like, hey, we want to do a plushie. And I'm like, vibe check myself and my viewers, but I'm like, I think there are enough folks who would want this. And because it never for me comes from a place of like, oh, I gotta make money. It's not that. I don't like merch to me is not about like being profitable, though it's something to keep in mind as far as not coming at a cost, but also like, would my viewers want this? I mean, if they want it, I do appreciate their support, and they want to support me by doing this or having a plush because they actually like my content that much, then so be it. And yeah, that's how it kind of came about. And I got my little figure behind me, and I got my plushie behind it. And it's kind of surreal to be like, I have a plushie and I guess an action figure.
That's awesome. Do you think like you're gonna maybe have like any more merch like that, or like, because I'm not sure if like you had to like reach out to companies or if like they've reached out to you. I'm not entirely sure how all of that might work.
They reached out to me. They hit me up with an email being like, hey, we're from this company, we just want to see what you think, and here's how to go down, and just consider it, and hammered out details, and boom, move forward.
Oh, nice. And all right, so like overall, is like, since like you're a YouTuber now, like let's say like if you weren't doing it, like what do you think you probably would have been doing had you not gotten this opportunity to be a YouTuber?
Gosh. I don't know. I was a copier salesman twice, and I got fired from both those jobs in early 2010s. I was a lifeguard before that, and actually was a lifeguard after that because I went back to my lifeguard job. I was a barista from 2015 to 16 or 17, no 16. And I went to college, got a degree, just didn't work out. I couldn't really find my fit. I had no idea what I was doing. I was having too much fun in college until I almost got kicked out, and I got serious, at least finished, but I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And I guess how the YouTube stuff kind of happened so organically on its own as a hobby, and had years to kind of just, I guess, incubate as far as me getting better at it and knowing it, never with the intention of doing it as a job, knowing that it could be maybe. But even back in the early 2010s, it was hard to even make it on YouTube because like monetization of your channel was so new and very exclusive. And even then when it started up, it was like, you know, here's $100 per month, and it's, or if even that. So I can't say it enough. Like the fact that so many audiences or viewers have shown up on YouTube is why YouTube is an actual viable career path. Same thing with Twitch, and I guess TikTok, I guess, is currently doing its thing with that. I don't know. I don't know TikTok that well.
I don't either.
I guess if, because around the early or mid 2010s when I quit my job I got fired from my copier job or whatever, it's a bit of a mutual quitting fire or whatever. I was like, do I go back to school? Maybe I can get my master's degree and then be a teacher, because I like talking to people and teaching them. But then I guess that manifests with me doing my videos, where, I mean, I don't have a teaching degree, but I still get to talk to people, and that's kind of cool.
That's pretty cool. It's interesting. Like the fact, like, yeah, like being a teacher does sound cool, honestly, but Your videos definitely, I feel like they are informative. I mean, obviously, it's not like you're just going on there and be like, oh, I need to teach everyone about everything. It's like you make interesting videos that are informative and fun. So I can definitely see like that connection.
Thank
And
you.
yeah,
It's a nice outlet. There are folks who are like, I watch your video and I use it for my like finals or I wrote a paper about it, or I use your research to help me do a project. And I'm like, it's cool. God, I hope I'm saying the right things. Like, I'm like, oh God, I don't want to be responsible for someone failing out of school. But at some point, it's like, it's on them. Like, I try to do my best with research, but it's not like airtight 100%. So I don't get things wrong, though I try to do my best. But yeah, I mean, it happens.
I guess you got to be on the lookout for a strongly worded email from someone saying that you're responsible for them failing.
Right.
And along like with your videos, have you ever come across like anything where you're like just like what the hell, like a film that was just so vile that like you actually decided against reviewing it?
Where the dead go to die. People tell me about that one a lot. It's very edgy and loud. And I don't know if I want to review that, because there's some moments where I'm like, well, because there are moments where I don't want YouTube to get angry at me. So that's a heavy consideration, because they'll punish you if you do the wrong thing. And then also personally, it's like, I just don't care, or I don't want to support this, or I don't feel a need to review this, talk about it.
Yeah, that I know some of your videos, you always just have jokes. You're like, YouTube, please don't take this video down.
They did that somewhat with the that Ebit Shoe video review. They age restricted it. So womp womp. Yeah, whatever happens.
Yeah.
I don't think it was that raunchy, but whatever. YouTube's weird.
Yeah, I don't know like what kind of standards they have. It's like sometimes it makes sense, and then other times like I see things they do and I'm just like, how did you come to this decision?
Right.
And we're getting close to the end here, so let's see. I guess the other thing I wanted to know, because I know you have your gaming channel, Saberspark 64, so you're obviously not opposed to doing other things aside from like animated content and like movies and shows. So have you ever thought about reviewing or discussing comics?
Not really. I think comics are neat, but I don't have a burning passion to consume it, let alone review it. Maybe down the road, but it's not really my wheelhouse.
Gotcha. Yeah, if you did, I guess you'd be a good contender to. Not a contender. I guess you'd be good competition for Linkara with the top of the fourth wall if you ever decided to do it. And then finally,
Right, here we go.
oh boy, the question that everyone listening to would like the answer to: are you a furry? And when did that start? If you were, well, if you are.
So I don't know, genuinely. I know there's a cop out like reply,
Yeah.
but like I know I'm a brony, and because it's like, do you watch My Little Pony? Yes. Do you go to pony conventions? Yes. Do you like to celebrate the show? Yes. Okay, I'm a brony. Furries to me, it's like I would go to a furry convention just because of to be amused, to see the culture. That's how I like to live life, is to participate and see things. I think life can get boring, and to have these outrageous like conventions, or even going to a perceived normie convention like MomoCon or whatever, or Dragon Con, can still have a lot of fun there with quirky nerd people just being silly and having fun. I like that. It adds spice to life. I'd like to see people do their thing, as long as it's like, not obnoxious. And for the furry stuff, I like anthro characters a lot in storytelling. I think there are anthro designs where it's like, that's pleasing to the eyes. I like that a lot. But like going to a furry convention, I mean, I would check out panels and maybe the concert and see what's going on. But me being active in the furry community, and this answer doesn't come from a place of me being repulsed. Like, that's not it. It's just, I don't think it's for me. Or not that it's not for me. I just don't feel like I can mobilize myself to be a part of it. So like, I don't know. It's hard to really answer, because furries, it's a bit more of a amorphous. Is that the right phrase? I forget the phrase. It's not as defined as a brony, and that's makes it kind of hard for me to consider if I am one or not. I guess if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So for folks who are like, oh yeah, Saber's a furry, I take no offense. I'm like, yeah, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I don't know. Because I'm not like actively like, I go to furry cons, I gotta get my fursona, I gotta get my fursuit. It's like, no, not really. But I also enjoy like the Bad Guys trailer for like DreamWorks' new upcoming film. That looks great. I think the designs look fantastic. I love that. And I don't know, maybe I need to go to a furry convention and find out for myself. And that's where I should probably, like, it's probably the best way to really summarize it is to go and see it for myself.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense. I feel like that's a fair response too, because I mean, I'm at least like in the same camp with like that trailer for that movie, like the Bad Guys. Like, it's like I'm not looking at like, ugh, furry characters. It's like, no, it looks cool.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's to me, I think life's too short to get upset over stuff unless there's like genuine context of like someone really making you uncomfortable, or it's just not for you. It's weird. I feel like consent, being polite, reading the room, stuff like that is important. But also, I think there are folks who overreact while they'll see like a fursuit or a brony, and they're like, "This is Satan at work," and that's like, calm down. It's not that bad. Like, it's just humans celebrating life, culture, art, being silly, having fun, being weird. It's nothing nefarious, though. Of course, like, I'm just in that grand scope of folks just being themselves. I'm sure you'll find moments where an individual could have a bad experience, and that's not to be dismissed. But I'm also a big believer of like, I guess I encourage people to like, don't be so hasty to judge an entire group of people based on like a single event. In my opinion, I don't know. I like, because I'll go up to bat for bronies, knowing that there are some pretty obnoxious bronies out there and people who've had obnoxious run-ins with bronies, but also plenty of other bronies who are polite, kind, have social awareness. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp. It's like, it's all just, as long as no one's like being rude to each other, it's like maybe I'll have like a laugh, because it's like, I mean, I'm into like weird stuff. I mean, I'm a Sonic fan. I mean, that alone is freaking dumb.
So so you already know like what folks like the preconceived whatever folks carry that stigma where they'll be like, oh, you're a Sonic fan, and it's like, yeah, calm down, let me talk. let me explain myself. Or yeah, you're basing it off of other like the I guess reputation of the fandom or whatever, but like you'd be surprised how many people aren't as bad as what folks think they might be, or based on what they like or their fandom, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's, I'm not opposed to having just like a good, like just good laugh. But I mean, if everyone's just having fun, it's like, yeah, there's no need to like sit there and just give people a hard time. But I think that covers pretty much everything. I mean, was there anything else you want to talk about today?
No, this has been a fun interview, and I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. I mean, thank you for coming on the show. Like, I was surprised when I just sent an email and then he got back to me. I'm like, oh, like I was very surprised. I'm very thankful. And I guess like before you go, do you want to just tell the audience like where they can find you online? Like I'll leave links and everything as well.
Sure. YouTube, Saberspark, that's my main wheelhouse. I have a Twitter account, and that's kind of where I goof off online for the most part. So you can find my dumb face on there.
Sounds good. Well, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. I had an absolute blast.
Well, thank you once again. You were a great host. It was fun talking to you, and best of luck to you.
Thank you. See you around.
See ya.